Welcome to chapter 9, the book of John. Jesus heals the blind man. This next chapter is all one story, very interesting. And as remember, we see before this chapter, Jesus coming into Jerusalem, preaching and teaching in the temple, and the Jews have a hatred for him because the people are coming to him and things that he's claiming, to the point of saying that before Abraham existed, I am. And so they're there and listening to this. Now, they have a certain point. Anybody could say that before Abraham, I am. What does that mean? It means that you're saying something that goes against everything that they believe, sort of. That even what they believe could be wrong, but it goes against what their belief is. So what does Jesus do? He proves his point that he did things that he says he did, be existing before Abraham. So we go into the text in verse 1, it says, "Ke paragon," and passing on, "Ethan anthropon tiflon ek genetis." He beheld a man blind from out of birth. Now John is the narrator, and he's telling this, that Jesus knew he was blind from out of birth, but basically this is a point that the man did something that caused his blindness. He was born that way. And it says, "Ke erotisan avton imathite avtu," and his disciples asked him, Jesus' disciples asked Jesus, legonta, saying, Ravi. Now that's interesting because they call him a rabbi, a teacher. Tis emartan, who sinned? Utos, this one? Gonis avtu, are his parents? Ina tiflos genithi, that he should be born blind. Apokrithi oi sus, Jesus answered, Ute utos emartan, neither this one sinned, ute gonis avtu, nor his parents. Al ina phanarothi ta erga tu theu in avto, but that should be made manifest the works of God in him. I was a volunteer at Fairview State Hospital in Costa Mesa, California for a while, and I would go on Sundays and we would go to the different wards and bring the patients, is what they called, to the auditorium where they had a church service for them. And we sang and taught certain things, but most of these patients were all severely mentally handicapped, to try to say it the right way, and a lot of them are just jumping around and running around, and we try to make them sit down and listen. It was a real chore. But there were the ones in there that had some type of a problem from birth, like this man here. And so this one young man who was in a wheelchair, he had a board in front of him, and he had a drumstick in both of his hands and a little toggle so he could move his hands. And the drumstick in front of him was a board that had all these like buttons, big buttons, and he touched the button and he had a loudspeaker and it would say whatever he wanted to say. It was pre-programmed, like I have to go to the bathroom, I need a drink of water, it's time. And he had ones on there that the Lord loves you, Jesus loves you, things like that. And he had these giant stickers on his wheelchair, and Jesus loved him. And he would go rolling through this hospital, which was thousands of patients, and he was born this way, but yet he is a perfect example of what God was saying that his works, that the works of God would be manifest in him. They were manifested in me, seeing a man that had this kind of a belief, and he was probably around late 20s, that would do all these things. It was like, wow, this is just amazing that this young man is doing exactly what the Lord said in chapter 9, verse 3, that his works would be made manifest. Now, the work that Jesus is talking about here is going to now happen. This is making the blind man to see. And it continues in verse 4, Eme thee ergazes the ta erga tu pempsantos me, eos imera estin. It is necessary for me to work the works of the one having sent me forth while it is day. While Jesus was sent by the Father and needs to do it while he's there, the things that God would have him to do. And then he says, Erkate nix, then comes the night. Ote uthis thinate ergazes they, when no one is able to work. Now, some people could push that and say, well, that's the end of miracles. The godly type miracles, maybe walking on water, raising the dead, and no one's able to do those things. But we see in John 14:12, Jesus says, the one believing in me, the works which I do, even that one will do, and greater than these he will do. For I go to my Father. So the works will still occur. Jesus is more or less making this a personal thing for him, that he is there for a certain period of time and to do the works that God has put in front of him. But see, we have to be careful in taking things out of context and saying one thing right here and making a dogma that nobody can do a miracle anymore, because that's not what it means. In verse 5, Oten ento cosmo, whenever I should be in the world, again the cosmos, phos imi to cosmu, I am the light of the world. So he is saying, well, he's there, he's the light of the world. But that doesn't mean, again, that if he's not there, there's no light, because it says, many places, he says that going by the light, by his light. And so it doesn't preclude there being light. In verse 6, Tavta ipon eptase hame. These things having said, he spat on the ground. Ke epise pilon ek tu petismatos, and made mud from out of the spittle. Yuck. Ke epechrise ton pilon epi tu saphthalmus tu tiflu, and he smeared the mud upon the eyes of the blind man. Very weird, isn't it? Well, why wouldn't he just use some water? Well, I don't know, but if you're going to have anybody spit on you, Jesus would be the one that you would choose, no matter what the reason. If he wants to spit on mud, make mud and put them on your eyes, whatever his way of doing things are, is fine with me, and I'm sure it's fine with you also. And then in verse 7 it continues, Ke ipen avto, and he said to him, Jesus said to the blind man, Ipage, nipse is tin kolim vithran tu Siloam. Go, wash in the pool of Siloam. And the imperative, there's the imperative, exclamation mark. He's ordering him to do that. And it says, which is translated, eri menevete apestamenos, having been sent. Now, this pool of Siloam, there's articles on Wikipedia, you can look it up, and different pools and which ones was Siloam, and it goes on. And a lot of things were made up that weren't not really necessarily the original. Like they have two tombs, so one of them couldn't be the tomb, and neither one of them could be the tomb. And so whether or not they really know where this tomb of Siloam is or not, you can read all about it in Wikipedia. apilthan un ke anipsato. And he went forth then, the blind man, ke anipsato, and washed ke ilthan vlepon, and came seeing. Wow. I mean, this man was blind for all of his life. Now he comes out and he can see. In verse 8, eun gitones, then the neighbors, ke theoruntes avton to proteron, and the ones viewing him prior, tiflos in, knowing that he was blind, elegon, said, uk utos estin o kathimenos ke proseton. Is this not the one sitting down and begging? It would be like if you knew somebody all your life. Like me, I'm almost 85, and I knew somebody all my life, and he is blind. And I talked to him every morning, had coffee with him, and then all of a sudden he comes walking in someday, and he can see. It's like, what? And this is pretty much what the case is here. These people going, what? And this is the guy that we know. He's sitting there and begging. He's blind, can't see anything. People had to help him for many years. So it couldn't have been just an instant thing that he was blind one day and then this happened and then he was healed. No, it was over a period of time. And then Ali, verse 9, Ali elegon, others said, oti that utos estin, this is he. And Ali they, others said, oti omios avto estin, well, he is likened to him, looks like him, sort of. Ekinos elegon, that one said, oti ego imi, I am he. What are you talking about? It is me. Whoa. Then they knew. Elegon un avto, and they said to him, Pos aneoch thisan su e aphthalmi. How were your eyes opened? This is unheard of. How could that have possibly have been? Didn't go to a doctor, eye doctor. Apokrithi, Akinos, and that one answered, Keipen, and said, Anthropos, legomenos, Jesus, a man being called Jesus, pilon, epise, made mud. Ke epekrise, mu tus ophthalmos. He smeared it upon my eyes. Ke ipe me, and he said to me, Page istin kolin vithron to Siloam, and go into the pool of Siloam, ke nipse, and wash. Apelthon they, ke nipsamenos, then having gone forth, and having washed, anevlipsa, I gained sight. Wow. And epon unavto, and they said to him, well, pu estin akinos, where is that one? And Legi says, ukida, I don't know. 13, agusin av ton pros tus phariseus, and they led him to the Pharisees. Oh, there we come back to these Pharisees. In verse 14, in the savaton ote ton pilon epison o Isus. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the mud. Ke aneoxen of tus ophthalmus, and opened his eyes. Palin un eroton of ton, ke Pharisee pos anevlepson. Then again, the Pharisees asked him also how he gained sight. So now they've heard this man was saying sight, and he can see all of a sudden. So how'd that happen? O they epen aftis, and he said to them, Pilon epetheke me, epi tus ophthalmus. He placed mud to me upon the eye, so they knew apparently it was Jesus. Ke anipsamin, ke vlepo, and I washed, and I see. So now his works are proving who he is, that he is the I am, because he is doing something that nobody in history had ever done, as we will find out. Elegan un ek ton phariseon tenus, then some from out of the Pharisees said, Utos o anthropos uk esti para tu theou. This man is not from God, and they're talking about Jesus. Oti to savaton u tiri. He does not keep the Sabbaths. Ali elegon, others said, well, pos zina te anthropos amortolos te avta simia pein. How is a man, a sinner, able to do such signs? Ke schisma in avtis. And a schism, split, a schisma. We have the word schism. A split was among them. So now he doesn't keep the Sabbath. Well, he does keep the Sabbath, but we'll find out a little more here on that. And it says in 17, Legusin un to tiflo, Pauline. Again, they say to him, the blind man, you, ti legis peri aftu. You, what do you say concerning him? Ote anixe tsu tu saphthalmus, for he opened up your eyes. No, they epen. Oti said that. A prophetis estain. He's a prophet. Uk epistavson un iudei. And the Jews did not believe then peri aftu concerning him, oti tiflosein, that he was blind. Ke anevlepson, and gained sight. Eos otu ephonisan tus gonisav tu, they called his parents, to anavlepsantos, the one having gained sight. So now they're calling the parents of this man. Go out and find the parents. So they find him and bring him in. Ke erotisen aftus, and they ask them, legon, saying, Utos esten o io Simon, is this your son? On emis legate, whom you say, oti tiflos agenithi, that he was born blind? Pos un arti vlepi, how then does he see? Apokrithis anaftis, ogonis aftu, and his parents answered to him, Keipen said, Idaman, oti utos esten oios, imo, we have known that this is our son. Ke oti tiflos aganithi, and that he was born blind. Post they nin vlepi, but how now he sees? Uki the men, we have not known, we don't know. Etis inixon aftu tus ophthalmus, or who opened his eyes. Emis we uk edamen, we know not. Aftos ilikian eki, he has age, he's old enough. Aftu erotisate, ask him. Aftos peri aftu lalisi, he speak for himself. The tafta ipen igoni gonis aftu, these things his parents said, oti ephovunta tus eutheus, for they feared the Jews. Idi gar sinethethinto euthei ina eantis afton homologisi Christon, for already the Jews agreed that if anyone should acknowledge him, Jesus the Christ, aposinagogos genite, he should be removed from the synagogue. So now they're using threats towards people. Well, even today, the Jews still use threats, some of them. You think of the Hasidic Jews. You go to Mia Sharim in Jerusalem or places in Brooklyn, and where they are, and if you're doing something that they don't like, they will do things against you, trying to keep you from doing whatever they don't want you to do, and sort of a threat, sometimes physical and other ways. Now, as far as this man is breaking the Sabbath, well, he wasn't. The Sabbath of Moses was very specific and very succinct, short. There it is. But they made it into something that was never made by Moses, and it's all in this book called the Mishnah, which was the writings of the rabbis, many of them at the time of Jesus. And I wrote some places here that I was going to read, just to give you an idea how these rabbis developed this oral law after coming back from Babylon, from Nebuchadnezzar taking them to Babylon. And while they were in Babylon, they had no priesthood, no temple, so they invented the halakha, the oral law. And it says here, the ass may go out with its saddle cloth if it was fastened on the day before the Sabbath. Rabbi permits a false tooth or a gilded tooth, but the sages forbid it. So you couldn't put a false tooth because you're carrying something on the Sabbath. A cripple may go out with his wooden stump, says Rabbi Meyer, but Rabbi Josie's forbids it. So they can't have a stump, can't go out with a crutch, apparently. Here's one here. If a man stored up anything as seed or as a sample so as to smear it for healing, and he took it out on the Sabbath, he is guilty, however little the quantity. So it goes on and on. So I underlined them all there in the Mishnah, and there's many of them like this, and this was what Jesus was facing. They made up their own laws of the Sabbath, nothing to do with Moses. They're hypocritical. Now verse 23 continues, Via tuto igonis avtu ipon oti ilikian eki. On account of this, his parents said that he has age, avton erotisate, ask him, so the blame wouldn't be on them and they could stay in the synagogue. Ephonisan un ekdefteru ton anthropon. 924. Ephonisan un ekdefteru to anthropon os in tiflos. They called then for a second time the man who was blind. Hey, come on back in. Ke ipan avto, and they said to him, Those Thogxen give glory to God. Emis idhamen oti o anthropos utos amortolos estin. We know that this man is a sinner. And 925, apokrithi un ekinos ke epen. And then that one responded and said, well, e anthropos estin ukida. If he's a sinner, I know not. And either, one thing I know, OTT flows on arti vlepo, that being blind, now I see. I know that. Now whether he's a sinner, I don't know. Epen they avto Pauline, and they said again to him, well, ti api say, see, what did he do to you? Pos inixe su tos ophthalmus. How did he open your eyes? How did he open? So they're asking him. Now we get the teaching of a blind man. From 27 to 33, wonderful teaching by this man. Apokrithi avtis, and he answered to them, Ipon imin ithi. I told you already. Ke uki kusate, and you heard not. Ti Pauline thelate akuin. Why again do you want to hear? Mi ke imis thelate avtu mathite? Do you also want to become his disciples? Whoa. Elithori son un avton, and they reviled him. Ke ipon, si e mathitis akinu. You are that one's disciple. Emis they tu moe seos esmen mathite, which they're not disciples of, but they said, we are the disciples of Moses. Well, they're not. They're disciples of the rabbis that wrote that Mishnah. Emis idamen oti mosi, Lalalikan otheos. We know that to Moses God has spoken, yes. Tuton they, but this one, uk idamen pothen estin. We know not from what place he is. Well, they don't want to know. Apokrithi o anthropos, and the man responded, keipen of tis, and said to them, Engar tuto thavmaston estin, for this is wonderful. Oti imis, that you uk either te pothen esti, that you know not from where he is. That's wow. Ke aneoxe mu tos ophthalmos, and he opened my eyes. Well, either they oti amartolon o theos uk akue. Now we know that God does not hear sinners. Al ean tis theosavis e, but if anyone should be godly, keto thelima of tu pi, and should do his will, tuto akui. Ektu eonos uk ikusti, oti inixetis ophthalmus tiflu gaganimeno. For from out of the eon it was not heard of that anyone opened the eyes of one having been born blind. Imi in utos paratheu, unless this one was from God. Uk idhinato piin udhen, he would not be able to do anything. Apokrithi, and they responded, Ke ipanafto, and said to him, En amarties si aganithis olos, in sins you were entirely born, but not them, huh? Ke si didaskis imas, and you teach us? Ke exevelon afton exo, and they cast him outside. In verse 35, ikosen oi son, oti exevelon afton exo, and Jesus heard that they cast him outside, ke evron afton, and having found him, ipan avto, he said to him, si pistevis iston ion tu theu, do you believe in the Son of God? Now, he's not, see, now here, 4100. Remember I had it before was trust or believe, not faith. Faith is not a good word for this 4100. Do you believe in the Son of God? He couldn't trust because he doesn't even know who he is. So here we see the difference of the usage of 4100 pistis. And apokrithi, akinos, that one answered, keipe, and said, Ketis esti, Kyrie? Who is he, O Lord? In epistevo, that I should believe isavton, in him. Epe they avto o Isus, and Jesus said to him, Ke eoracas avton, ke o lalon metasu, akinos estin. Both you have seen him, and the one speaking with you is that one, just as he spoke to the woman at the well of Samaria. O they ephi pistevo, and he said, I believe, Kyrie, O Lord. Ke prosakinison avto, and down on the ground, with his face on the dirt and his hands bowing at the feet of our Lord. Just as we should be doing the same thing, because he has healed many of us being blind in a spiritual sense. We'll see how he brings that out here now next. In verse 39, Ke ipen o Isus, and Jesus said, Is krima ego iston kosmon tuton, for judgment I came into this world. So now he judged. He didn't. His purpose for coming in wasn't to judge, but he did come into the world to judge. And here he's judging. He says, "Ina e mi vlepontes vleposi, ke e vlepontes tifli genonte," and the one seeing should become blind. So basically, as I see it here, being blind is free from sin, receiving Jesus as the blind man did. But if you think you're seeing, but you're rejecting Jesus, then really that person is really the one that is blind. Ke ikusan ek ton Phariseon, and some of the ones of the Pharisees heard. Tafta e ontas medaftu, these, the ones being with him. Ke ipon afto, and they said to him, Me? Ke mis tifli asman? And not we, are we blind? But it's the opposite. Ipon aftis, o Jesus, Jesus said to them, E tifli iti, if you were blind, uk an ikate amartian, you would not have sin because you're believing in Jesus. Ninthe legate oti vlepomen, but now you say that we see, but they don't. E un amartia imon meni, therefore your sin remains. So we are sinners, and we have Jesus who has opened up our eyes to his word, to his teachings, to his behavior. Follow the things that he does the best we can, and put our trust in him. And we will walk through this world in a much better way than these other men who have rejected Jesus, and the ones today who still reject Jesus, whether they would be Jews or the people of the nations. Our next section is the Good Shepherd.